OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, and today I'll be going over a published study on raw vegan diet and what the science says about the raw vegan diet, as well as, of course, share my personal opinions about this topic since I started my raw vegan journey back in 1995 and for many years lived 100%, 99.9% raw vegan without the inclusion of any heat processed foods into my diet. That being said, when I started my raw vegan journey, there was no internet, there was no PubMed, and I was not able to look up published studies like I am now. And so because I have the time to do it now, and because I like to look up studies and know what the science is saying, aside from also my personal experience, also from what other people are telling me, and also observing the world and going through and living my life to share what happens, how I feel, and all these things. I know a lot of you guys are gonna poo-poo this episode and say, John, science doesn't know nothing, man. Like, they lie, it's all paid off, it's all this kind of stuff. And you know what? If you guys want to believe that, that is completely up to you. You know, here's the thing. I think science can be used as a helpful tool to maybe guide you where to go. I think, you know, in general, they're trying to do their best job to share the evidence with you, what is known and also what is unknown. And I know a lot of you guys may be thinking, John, science doesn't know a lot of things about raw foods and how it works on the inside, whether the energy and the biophotons and all these things. And okay, I definitely could see that because, I mean, when I'm eating high vibrant food that I pick fresh out of my garden, it affects me much differently than, you know, lettuce or greens I bought out of the store. Anyways, I'll share my comments about this in this episode. And the final thing before I get into the published study is I really want to caution people against following a lot of different raw vegan channels out there that may be new, may have not been doing it so long, and may not have been around the block or seen or observed as many things as people that have been doing it more of a long-term time. Also, I encourage you guys to watch out for raw vegan dogma. There, unfortunately, in 2023, there's still so much raw vegan dogma that is proven to be not true, but yet some people still say the dogma to get you sucked in, to make you think that the raw vegan diet is the cure-all. It'll cure all your ails. And you know, I'm a realist. Well, definitely going on a raw vegan diet, as this published study will show, can benefit many different, you know, situations, health situations. You know, maybe a similar plant-based diet would do the same also. Anyways, let's get into this study. All right, so as you guys can see, this is a study published in Clinical Nutrition Open Science. So this is a journal that deals with nutrition and clinical nutrition, and that's what they study there. So I was happy to see that, you know, raw veganism is making it into the published studies, and the title of the review is simply called The Effect of a Raw Vegetarian Diet from a Clinical Perspective Review of the Available Evidence. Unfortunately, not everything will be covered in science, but I think science, once again, can help us shed some light on the topics and also shed light on when things are going right, as well as when things don't go right. And especially, that's why one of the reasons why I look at all the science is to basically prevent things from happening that may happen in the future based on what the science is telling me now, right? So I want you guys to take some of the things that I'll be sharing and some of the things that the published study will be sharing with you guys also, and implement them into your life. All right, so basically we're going to sum this up. The effect of this study, if we look at the summary, it says the goal of the study was to investigate the effects of a raw vegetarian diet with review clinical trial studies. So they took a lot of different studies and looked at all the different studies and then summarized it in this to go over both the pros and the cons of a raw vegan diet. And to sum it up, if you want to turn this video off now, it says, based on our findings from the literature, a raw vegan diet with more than 90% raw food cannot be recommended for a long time due to micronutrient deficiencies as well as related complications. So, you know, when I say raw vegan on my channel, what I mean is you're eating 75% or more of a raw vegan diet. The percentage you want to choose to eat is up to you completely. These days, I like to say I, hover between 80 to 90%. You know, we're getting into winter, a little bit less, fresh fruits available, maybe eating a few more heat processed foods that I'll also be covering in a little bit. So yeah, this article is saying they don't want you to eat more than 90% because it's not recommended for a long time due to micronutrient deficiencies. Of course, if you have a properly planned raw vegan diet, which in my personal opinion, based on a lot of what I eat in a day videos I've seen online, most raw vegan diets are not well planned, and they can lead to micronutrient deficiencies in my personal opinion. So all right, let's continue on. So I mean, there's the introduction. I've highlighted several different areas that I want to cover, so I'll be reading those. I'll put a link down below to the full study if you guys want to review it yourself and read it from word to word. Anyways, it says adherence of vegetarian diet has been shown to play a role in controlling and reducing chronic diseases. So yes, of course, they're basically saying that plant-based diets can turn people's health around, right? For two reasons. Number one is because what they're no longer eating, which are the animal foods, especially animal foods in excess that can cause extreme problems, as well as hopefully if you're eating a vegetarian diet, you're eating a lot less processed foods, although there are junk, vegetarian diets that I do not recommend, because the ultra processed foods, no matter what your diet, is probably the biggest factor. And when you remove ultra processed foods, whether you go to a raw vegan, whether you go to just a vegan diet, or even if you go to a carnivore diet, you will get benefits because you're just not eating the ultra processed junk food that is out there. All right. That's what it says right here. Processed foods have always been considered unhealthy, and the consumption of unprocessed foods has been encouraged. Cooking food can have harmful effects, including loss of some essential nutrients, the destruction of influential enzymes like myrosinase in cruciferous vegetables and alanase in garlic that produce anti-cancer compounds, and the creation of mutagenic and pro-inflammatory compounds. So based on that statement, you might think, oh, because of those things, I'm not going to cook my food anymore. And, once again, focusing on the minutia or just a few small details on why raw foods are so good for us, I think you can lose yourself in the noise and just focus on the micro when we need to really be looking more at the macro. And then it comes down to saying, raw vegetarians believe that not heating food above this temperature, which is 47 degrees Celsius, that food enzymes are active and can improve digestion. However, there is no scientific explanation to support this claim. In fact, acidic environment of the stomach inactivates food enzymes before nutrients reach the small intestine for absorption. So there's a whole enzyme theory, and my personal belief is that enzymes can be helpful in helping us digest our food, in some ways, right? Maybe not the way you guys think, or maybe that we're led to believe, and as they talk about in this paragraph above, that essential nutrients such as influential enzymes. So for example, if you're eating a raw cruciferous vegetable, I'm growing cruciferous vegetables in my garden. This time of year, it's abound with all kinds of different bok choys, tatsoys, mizuna, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, collard greens. All those brassica family plants, when I pick them raw out of my garden, have enzymes, and really rich in enzymes because they're fresh and just picked. And when I eat it and crush it open with my mouth and release the myrosinase enzyme in the food, it turns the glucosinolates into isothiocyanates. The same thing happens with the onion family of plants with the alanase. And if I took that same leaf of bok choy and I cooked it, right, I would lose all the myrosinase in it, and then if I ate it, right, I wouldn't get the beneficial effects, right? So in this way, I believe enzymes are quite critical, and some foods are definitely better raw, although some foods may be better heat processed as well. So then it goes on to say what raw vegetarian diets include, and of course that can vary depending on your specific style of raw vegetarian diet or raw vegan diet. And so what I'll say is this, right? The more restrictive your raw vegan diet is, right, the more likely you are to have nutrient deficiencies and have problems in the long run. And that's the key words there, the long run. Anybody could go on an all fruit diet for, 7 days, maybe even a month, right? have some great results, especially if you're coming off McDonald's and toxic processed junk foods and ultra processed foods, right? If the food you guys were eating are worse than eating 100% fruit on a fast or a juice fast, which I'm not necessarily, the biggest fan of, then you're going to have some benefits. But let's not forget that these benefits are because of not what you're necessarily eating, which is definitely fruit, which is healthier than what you're not eating. But also we must remember this is a short-term thing. In the long term, once again, I've been doing this 28 years now, guys. I feel I'm in really good health. I get my blood markers checked. I get my microbiome checked. I feel great, right? And a lot of people, especially if they're in their 2, 3, 6 year mark, if they haven't been doing that long, they don't know the long-term consequences of their short-term dietary restriction. And that's the most important thing. I don't want you guys to over-restrict your diet and have an open mind, even though a lot of the raw vegan gurus online will say, you gotta eat all raw, or else you're a failure, or else you one morsel of cooked, you're going down the deep end, man. People called me, like, man, John, you have a cooked food addiction. Like, whatever, man. Like, I see the inherent value of every different type of food, whether it's consumed raw or heat processed. And of course, when I say heat processed, I don't just fry stuff in the, air fryer or deep fry it. I still don't have an oven. My stove is disconnected in my house. So I can't cook on a stove. I only use an Instant Pot that in my studies, and what I reveal is that that's the best way to heat process food, to do the minimal damage to the food, to create the minimal, if any, toxins, and to make some of the nutrients more bioavailable, and of course expand the varieties of foods you can eat. Links down below to my video on how I heat process foods the best way, and if all cooked foods are bad, actually. Anyways, let's go ahead and come down. So now we're going to go into the results. They basically reviewed a bunch of different studies, and they saw that yes, a raw vegan diet, according to the published studies, can have some massive benefits. One of the main benefits was on cardiometabolic risk factors. So basically they looked at things like cholesterol and LDL, phospholipids, and all these different things, serum lipids, and they showed that a raw vegan diet can definitely help with cardiometabolic risk factors. That being said, the same thing could be said about a whole food plant-based diet as well. Because once again, it's not what you're necessarily including, it's what you're not including. And hopefully if you're on a whole food plant-based diet, you're eating, minimally processed whole fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and other things. So do we really need to restrict down to just convert it down to just eating raw fruits and vegetables and some nuts and seeds sometimes? Most raw vegans, I will remind you, don't eat a lot of grains, sprouted grains, or sprouted beans and legumes that are edible raw. Anyways, coming down, they also have some studies on raw vegetarianism and joint problems, and they did a study with fibromyalgia where they had significant reductions in shoulder pain, improvement in neck rotation. But the question is, I could also find studies that show, similar results with whole food plant-based diet once again, right? So is it because the raw food is magical and has these enzymes that end up getting, inactivated in our stomach anyways? Or is it because they're not including the ultra-processed foods, the animal foods that they're no longer eating? Okay, other clinical effects of raw vegan diet, they've seen a weight loss. So yes, on a raw vegan diet, you could lose weight. Now, why is that? It's because fruits and vegetables are the least calorically dense of any of the plant foods out there. Vegetables are the least calorically dense out of almost any food, basically about 100 calories per pound, if that, depending on the leaf you're eating, or other vegetable, maybe a bit higher. And then fruits, 300 calories per pound. So literally we don't have enough room in our stomachs to eat a lot of calories, so you will lose weight. But you could also achieve this on an appropriately planned, whole food plant-based diet as well. Weight loss, and then going down, it says improvements in mental and emotional quality of life, including reduced anxiety and stress on a raw vegan diet, but when you're also in an institute. So that's the kicker. Some people, if you eat raw vegan and you think, man, I'm stressed out because I got to confine myself to this raw vegan diet. I got to go shopping every day. I got to find more organic food. I got to prepare it. I got to juice it. I got to food process. I got to dehydrate stuff. you could get stressed out, and then that is not good for your health, guys. So you guys have to find the appropriate balance for you. I've set up my life so that I can eat the highest quality diet and spend time in the kitchen if I want, which I do, to even grow my own food at home so I can eat the diet that I want and I enjoy it. But if a raw vegan diet stresses you out because you're always, what am I going to eat next? Then maybe, right, don't eat all raw vegan, eat like super high raw vegan and maybe have some heat processed things that are minimally heat processed so you don't stress out enough as much. And that'd probably be healthier for you, all right? And of course, down here, this is an interesting one. It says a case control study showed that raw vegan followers had better oral hygiene and lower probing depth, bleeding on probing and simplified oral hygiene index compared to controls, which is interesting because there are other studies that show that, you know, raw vegans may have more fillings. So, you know, it's tough to say like, oh, just because you're raw vegan, you're going to have good teeth or you're going to have bad teeth. It depends on what you're eating and how you take care of your teeth, what you do after you eat. Like if you're eating lots of dried fruits and you don't like at least minimally swish out, if you don't alkalinize your mouth with green powders or at least sodium bicarbonate, if you're eating highly acidic fruits, you're drinking a lot of kombucha and let that sit on your teeth, right? These things can be really terrible for your dental health. Well, I'll put a link down below to my video on my dental health tips. I had lots of issues on a raw vegan diet when I did not take care of my teeth because I'm like, I'm on a raw vegan diet. I don't need to brush my teeth because no animal brush their teeth. When, once again, that's really not a good thing to think. And unfortunately, that's still propagated in some raw food camps these days. Anyways, let's go down to discussion. So on the discussion, they basically go over the science. And here's some of the benefits of a raw vegan diet. Okay, relatively favorable effects have been reported in some studies, including decreased blood lipids, weight, and BMI, and blood sugar. I've kind of explained why this happens. Blood pressure, inflammation markers, reduced joint disease symptoms, and improved quality of life. Okay, so this is great that there are absolutely benefits to eating more raw foods, and I think that vegans that are not eating any raw foods or a very small amount of raw foods should eat more raw foods. I mean, I think people should at least minimally eat a 50% raw vegan diet just overall. You know, if you're just eating healthy fruits and having less processed food, eating more greens and salads, making fresh juices, vacuum blended smoothies, right? These are all really good things that most Americans should be doing. The question is, should we eat all raw? You know, and that's where this study will talk about maybe some of the things that are negative or side effects of the raw vegan diet, which such as decreased HDL. You know, you also have, reduced LDL, and I've noticed decreased HDL myself. And this is the one, this is a big troubling one right here. Increased homocysteine. And amenorrhea, that's when actually the women lose their period. And that's likely because of nutrient and or calorie deficiency because they're just literally not eating enough. Of course, I know, you know, raw vegan women that have had babies and all these things. But I think that many improperly planned raw vegan diets people are not eating enough nutrients and or calories. For sure, they're basically under eating. Okay, but the biggest issue with this is the increased homocysteine, and that's because of the B12 status. You know, I recommend that everybody, plant-based or raw vegan or not, should probably be supplementing with B12 because it's an environmental issue, not necessarily a vegan issue. I take a vitamin B12 as well as a vitamin D supplement in the supplement called Complement. I'll put a link down below to the video on Complement where I actually test my blood before and after taking the Complement to show you guys the increase in my B12 and D status. And of course that supplement also has other micronutrients that may be deficient in a plant-based diet or raw vegan diet for that matter. So we could go down to the bottom of the discussion. It says, it seems that raw vegan diet has disadvantages such as the inactivation of toxins and pesticides and contamination with microorganisms due to insufficient heating and insufficient intake of some nutrients such as protein, vitamin 12, iron, calcium, selenium, zinc, omega-3 fats, and vitamin D. The increase in homocysteine is related to low B12 intake intake in these patients, urine MMA has also been shown to be much more effective than serum cobalamin in identifying raw vegan risk for vitamin B12 deficiency and monitoring the improvement of cobalamin status. Early detection and supplementation are the best ways to prevent neurological damage and disorders. The occurrence of amenorrhea in women on a raw vegan diet is also a sign of functional problems in the long term following such a diet. It has also been observed that most subjects who follow this diet are not able to provide the recommended amounts of food groups, especially cereals. I would probably also recommend and say beans. Although our study is one of the first studies to review and examine the effects of raw vegetarian diet on chronic disease such as cardiovascular disease and joint problems, the present study also has some limitations. We did not determine raw vegetarian diets on all chronic diseases comprehensively, and also not fully examining possible side effects of this diet. So let's go over that. So basically, what they're saying is that depending on how you eat your raw vegan diet, because there are many kinds of raw vegan diets, you can eat bananas, dates, and romaine lettuce every day, each day, and you could say you're raw, but that, in my opinion, is not a properly planned or appropriate, nutritious, raw vegan diet. Likewise, you could eat 100% fruit, right? And I guarantee if you eat 100% sweet fruit, you will be deficient in some of the things that they mention above. Leafy greens are especially important for your omega-3s, as well as some of the special minerals, right? I also like to include seaweed because iodine is another trace mineral that may be deficient in vegans and raw vegans, right? Of course, getting enough sun, getting vitamin D if you're not getting enough sun because you're working inside, and of course, supplementing with B12 is critical. I know some raw vegan camps still don't recommend supplementation of B12 because they believe we could make it and all this kind of stuff. Don't risk neurological disease. I've known raw vegans that have gotten neurological disease because they were against supplementation. And at least if you don't want to supplement, that's all right. Get your B12 and homocysteine and methylmalonic acid checked and make sure they are all in line. What I will tell you after living this way for 28 years and getting my stuff tested and maybe not being the most supplement compliant in my early years, because I thought I could do it all natural, is that my B12 was always, in the normal range, but very low, and my homocysteine was always elevated. And I probably should have been supplementing earlier. I'm like, I'm gonna do it all natural, so I'm not gonna supplement. And looking back on the past, I don't want you guys to make the same mistake. I did not supplement, and I think I would be in better health than I am today if I did. Right? So that's why I supplement today. All right, so let's go down to the conclusions. There is little scientific evidence of the positive effects of raw vegetarianism from a clinical perspective. According to data obtained in the reports in the literature, a raw vegan diet with more than 90% raw food cannot be recommended for a long time. In order to investigate possible advantages and disadvantages, it seems necessary to conduct more clinical trials with appropriate design and sufficient sample size. So what is that study saying overall? There can be benefits to a raw vegan diet, but there can also be some major pitfalls according to this published study. Now, studies do not know everything, but what I will say is that I will agree with this study on many points, right? You can get amazing benefits from eating a raw vegan diet, and it makes me happy to see so many people getting into eating a raw vegan diet online. That being said, I don't want you guys to put yourself in a box and only eat raw vegan because, raw vegan healed me from these conditions, so that means it's good for the rest of my life, right? This study briefly touched on microbiome and how a raw vegan diet can modulate your microbiome. Of course, if you're coming from a standard American junk food diet, you eat raw vegan, that's going to improve your microbiome until the restrictive raw vegan diet you're on, including maybe if you're eating only fruits, right, will get you somewhere, but then you're going to plateau, and then your health is not going to continue to go up. It'll start to go down. I personally experienced this in small ways, and when I started including more heat processed foods and unrestricting my raw vegan diet and not be so closed-minded that I got to eat only raw, because one of my main things that this study definitely touches on is the digestive leukocytosis, which was what I was taught when I got into raw foods in 1995. I was taught that, hey, if you eat any cooked food, it activates your immune system. It's like the boy who cried wolf, so don't do it, because I had complement immune deficiency. That's what I was diagnosed with, and I did not want to give the false alarm of my immune system being activated every time I ate raw foods. Since then, I've learned that's not entirely accurate, and what actually activates your immune system is foreign proteins of animal origin, not of plant origin. So even the worst heat processed plant-based foods will not cause digestive leukocytosis. That being said, the worst fried plant-based foods such as French fries and potato chips have other bad effects on your health, you know. So once again, I don't want you guys to put yourself in a box. I want you guys to open yourself up to eating a wider variety of food, because the studies show that eating a wider variety of foods, even restricted within raw foods, if you want to maintain your raw label. But I have videos where I talk about unlabeling yourself and not putting yourself in a box, because labels are very restrictive. Instead, state what you want to eat and your overall health goals. You know, my health goals at this point are to live a long and healthy life. I hope your goals are in line with that. And I found that by eating and being restrictive to only a raw vegan diet is restricting this. For example, you know, one of these things I like to think about is, how many raw vegans do you know? How many raw vegans do you guys know in their 90s or even 100? Yeah, I mean, I know, like, I could think Fred Beeshe's in his 90s. He's like kicking some butt, you know, gotta love Fred. But, you know, unfortunately, most raw vegans, because I've been doing this 28 years, I've seen when some of them pass. And, you know, they're basically living a standard life with standard lifespan. I don't see them getting super long lifespan. I mean, maybe some exceptions would be Jay Kordich in his 90s and Norman Walker. They were both big juicers, and that's why I advocate juicing, because juicing allows you to concentrate nutrition of especially leafy greens and vegetables and get them into you, especially as the soils are deficient in some of the different nutrients and minerals these days. But eating a high fruit diet, in my opinion, you're not going to really be extending your life. I also like to look at blue zones. What are people in blue zones eating? You know, people in blue zones maybe eat a little bit of raw foods. I like to see them eat more raw foods, and they just happen to be lucky because their style of diet and their lifestyle gives them a longer life. So what can we learn from them, right? A lot of them eat heated carbohydrate foods. So let's heat those foods in the best ways possible, and that's what I'm doing these days. And I have seen a beneficial shift in my microbiome. My diversity was 750, went to 750, went up to 850 when I started making some changes. Now my diversity is up to 950, you know? So I encourage you guys to do all the testing you're able to monitor where you're at, not restrict yourself as much. If you want to heat process some foods, heat process them in the most gentle ways to make some nutrients more bioavailable. Link down below in my video where I talk about how you can increase the absorption of some of the things like beta carotene when you actually heat process food than if it's raw, right? Because you break open more cell walls than you can do mechanically with your teeth, or even through different kind of extraction or raw food kitchen appliance methods, such as even slow juicing or vacuum blending. Plus, of course, when you heat process foods, you now expand your repertoire of what you guys can eat. So for example, I never recommend eating raw kidney beans, sprouted or not. They can kill you. But did you know that even, you know, heat processed kidney beans, which I like to cook in the Instant Pot, have higher antioxidant potential than even wild blueberries, which I also love, right? And also, of course, let's not forget about all the different resistant starches. Link down below to my video on resistant starches, as well as unique kinds of fibers. My video on prebiotics down below. I mean, I get into the nitty-gritty things that you're not going to hear on other raw vegan channels. If you don't like thinking, don't watch my channel, because I want to get you guys to think about what you're doing so that you guys can achieve your health goals that you want, that you desire, and get on the diet that you want. And it's unfortunate that not many people into raw vegans are what I would call free thinkers, or want to take it beyond. They just continue to repeat the dogma that definitely will work for so many people, especially if you're a newbie getting right in. But then at some point, their information will fail you, and then you're going to make a video as an ex-raw vegan or ex-vegan, which I hate seeing those videos, guys. So I want you guys to, you know, stay on a plant-based diet, do it as healthy as possible so that you guys can get all the benefits, not only in the short term, but also in the long term to come. So if you guys are not already, make sure you click the subscribe button down below. Make sure you click the little bell to get notified as many videos come out, because I have a lot of cool videos planned for you guys where I go into things that you will not be learning on any other raw vegan diet channel. I guarantee it. Also be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you liked this content where I went over some of the studies and also shared my personal opinions on some of the information in the study, as well as my thoughts on eating a healthy raw vegan diet that's very high raw. But let's not forget, we can include some heat processed foods in small quantities to round out and make our diet even better. Also be sure to share this video with other raw vegans that are so tightly put in their box you feel that they're gonna fall off a cliff. And also, of course, be sure to check my past episodes. The past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 700 episodes at this time on this channel. I'll put links down below in the description to some of the videos that I've mentioned in this video, including my videos on resistant starch, as well as heat processing food, as well as, you know, expanding your diet and not putting yourself in a box, as well as some of my whiteboards that I love so much, because I'm here to teach and educate you guys and getting you guys starting to think for yourself instead of just listening to the dogma out there. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always best.